You can make the argument, but it feels like such a tightrope edge case. What's up guys, it's Sebastian from Ask Sebby Business. Today we're going to look at the US Bank Business Leverage Card. We'll start with the basics and also why it's not the greatest card out there, look at some cashback alternatives and some aspirational travel alternatives. Lastly, we'll talk about some other considerations if you are considering a US Bank card as a whole. Big favor before we dive into all of this is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm, and if you are new here, you want to maximize your cashback or maybe do some cool trips using your business spend, then consider subscribing. When you look at the marketing for the card, the focus seems to be that they want to help you earn the most rewards. My first thoughts from all of this is that it must have great multipliers, especially if you're familiar with US Bank and some of their other cards. On the personal side, the Cash Plus is awesome, a 5%er card where you can pick categories, and it's great, it's a no annual fee one. On the business side, they have something called the Triple Cash card. I'll do a video in the future, but also a great card. No annual fee, earns you pretty competitive rates. With the leverage card, you're going to get 2% back on your top two categories based off what you spend each month. So for example, if you spend, let's say $2,000 on gas, $1,000 on shipping, and $500 on food, it's going to be for gas and shipping. On top of this, there's no rewards cap, and you also get 5% back on prepaid hotels and car rentals through their travel reward center. Although it might sound good or okay right now, it's really not once you look at the competition. There are some other perks like pay over time as well as employee card controls, but I feel like these are table stakes for most business cards. If this was a no annual fee card, then I think it'd be okay, it'd be fine, but the problem is that in the long term, it's not. There is a $0 intro annual fee for the first year, but after that, it's $95 every subsequent year. Main takeaway for this section is that I think it's fine as a 1-year tester for the intro bonus as well as the waived annual fee, but that's pretty much it. In the long term, I have a hard time recommending it unless you fall into this very specific edge case. And let's actually talk about it and look at some numbers for part 2, which are going to be some cashback alternatives. On the top of my list is the Capital One Spark Cash Plus, which earns you 2% across the board on all of your categories. So not just limited to the top 2 categories for spend, but everything. The one disadvantage is that there is a long-term annual fee of $150, so there is a balancing act. The cool thing of cashback cards is that you can actually prove a lot of these numbers pretty fast with a break-even. Let's say X is your 2 high spend categories and Y is everything else. And again, these are going to be every month, so it might be different. So you can put the Spark Cash Plus on one side, the US Bank leverage on the other side, put in the multipliers and also the annual fees, break down everything, and then you have Y equals 5,500. If you divide that by 12, it's $458.33. This means that on a per month basis, if you spend more than $459 on everything outside of the top 2 categories, then the Capital One card makes more sense. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like $459 is a pretty low bar, especially for businesses, and especially if you do think you're going to scale. In effect, outside of the intro bonus in the first year, this means that the US Bank leverage only really makes sense if you, number 1, have only 2 categories and you don't really spend outside of that. Number 2, you don't see your overall business spend expanding. For me at least, I'd rather do the Capital One card or even the Chase Ink Unlimited just to future-proof my setup a bit more and to have more optionality in the future. Again, you can make that argument, but it feels like such a tightrope edge case. On that note, if you do want to learn more about cards, whether this one or pretty much any other card out there, and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebby.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise, it's a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Well, what about the 5% back on prepaid hotels and car rentals through their portal? Although that sounds good, a lot of other cards have this, even no annual fee ones. Back to the Spark Cash Plus, you get the same 5% back on their portal. Also, for anyone unfamiliar, I would argue that the US Bank portal is probably one of the worst ones out there. It's pretty clunky and also antiquated. It also doesn't help that the rates tend to also not be as good for whatever reason, at least in my experience. You also see this on the Spark Cash Select card, which is a 1.5% everywhere card that has no annual fee. So exactly the same 5% cash back on hotels and car rentals booked through the Capital One travel portal. I know sometimes people get angry that maybe I'm not mentioning a feature, and oftentimes it's because it's not a feature above replacement, so a feature that's worth talking about. For number 3, let's move over to aspirational travel, so people who want to use the spend from their work and get points to do cool trips. Generally speaking, this is how a lot of business owners end up flying first in business because they're using points, or they're also going to places like the Maldives or Bora Bora. It might feel like deja vu, but I'd argue that the Spark Cash Plus card also wins here. If you're someone on team travel, you probably also have either the Venture or Venture X, and as long as you have one of those cards, you can actually take the cash back that you earn from the Spark cards and transfer them over there and use them as points. The main draw is that you take the Capital One miles, transfer them over to partners, and then they have their own award charts. Not everything's going to make sense, but you generally want to look for these sweet spots where you get crazy value. Also factor in that there's arguably no downside risk. So the floor value of the cash out rate is exactly the same. 2% is still 2%. So worst case, both cards are earning the same thing. best case, Capital One points or cash back is going to be worth a lot more because you get more value from it. Even if you don't necessarily want to do that, it's the optionality to do it. I won't go too much into this one, but another option is a Chase Ink Unlimited. So if you get that card, you're only earning 1.5% cash back, which is really 1.5x ultimate reward points, but you can get a lot more value because with their program, you have certain cards that basically increase the multipliers. So for example, if a card like the Chase Sapphire Reserve, you get 50% more value from your points, so 1.5% is really 2.25%. And to be fair, that's only for pay yourself back and when you book travel through their portal, but you get the idea that you can get a lot more value. All right, so lastly, let's look at number 4, which are some other considerations. When you're dating or when you're considering pretty much anything, you kind of want to balance out the value that you're getting relative to the work it takes. If you're getting a ton of value, then you're willing to deal with more nonsense and jump through more hoops. But if you're not getting enough, then it's just not worth it. Probably showing my age, but I think How I Met Your Mother depicted this pretty well. The more hot a card is, the more craziness you're willing to deal with. And let me tell you that US Bank tends to be more in the temperamental end. And there are good US Bank cards, so the triple cash rewards I'd say is a hot card, 3% back on a ton of categories, and also no annual fee. I feel like that one's worth jumping through hoops for, but the leverage card is not. The main issue for a lot of people at least is that US Bank is very relationships driven, and they also have kind of antiquated underwriting and criterias. I'd say that there's 3 main issues. Number 1, it's not abnormal for them to reject you due to geography. If you're someone that's in a region that doesn't have a US Bank branch, then they're going to automatically reject you. And to be fair, there are ways to get around this, so you can jump through hoops, but it might not be worth it for this card. I feel like in today's age where people tend to be more transient and can pretty much live in any city and move around a lot, it just doesn't make sense. Even for small business owners, it's not abnormal to kind of travel a lot of places, but still be based maybe in a state that doesn't have a branch. Number 2 is that generally speaking, they tend to be pretty risk adverse with approvals. And at least that's true on the personal side. On the business side, I have seen some counter arguments that it's a bit better, but still not great. If you're someone that has too many inquiries or new applications, then you're going to have a tougher time. And to be fair, this is true for a lot of other issuers as well, but it just feels like the work is worth it for those long-term cards. Number 3, even if they approve you, limits tend to be on the lower end. Looking at a bunch of data points, 3,000 to 5,000 as a max limit tends to be pretty common. At least for the business cards, personal cards are a little bit different as well. Before you get angry, reminder that your mileage may vary. This is just what I found from my research, but your experience might be different. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, asksebby.com, and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point, leave a rope emoji for a tightrope in the comments down below, and I'll try to harden and also respond. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the card? What would they need to change in order to make it competitive, or is it good enough? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, give this a thumbs up, consider sharing it with anyone else who might benefit, but otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.